This is project 13.09.01, Johns Prairie building demolition and concrete removal. And that's at 500 East Export Road and 340 East Millwright Road. And the contract labor for this was provided by Bessie and Sons of Montesano. And this project is being funded by the 2012 Johns Prairie Timber Sale. Before I get into the project, I'll just give you some brief background. This is an aerial photo of the Johns Prairie industrial site. Basically, it's been timber industry oriented for many decades, and one side effect of that kind of industry is you end up with a lot of wood waste debris mixed with gravel. And it's pretty difficult to figure out what to do with that. Separating it is costly and time consuming. It has limited value once you do separate it, so it's really not feasible to do so, which is why it continues to kind of build up over time. So, current tenants that are out there would be Simpson up here in the northwest portion. This, of course, is GV 3's new facility. What happened there? Sorry. I'll stop touching that, I guess. On the east or right-hand side is McFarland Cascade, which was, as John said, bought by Stella Jones recently. A lower kind of central portion, that's Shear Brothers Chipping, and then kind of right in the middle of the image is currently vacant. Most recently it was leased by Wellpaw Bay Hardwoods, and there's some kilns and lumber storage buildings there. So, as I mentioned, decades of timber industry creates all kinds of wood waste gravel mixtures. This is Mason County Forest Products' former site, which is now part of the Simpson Timber lease. And you can see a stormwater management treatment pond there on the right. And I'm kind of standing on top of this giant pile of wood waste gravel, looking out over what they call the log decks, which are pretty much empty in this image because it was right as Mason County Forest Products was starting to move on out, basically. Now, ultimately, to minimize this kind of wood waste accumulation, what you would do is pave everything, and then when bark debris or wood waste is generated, it's easy to clean up and get rid of. The problem is we're talking about many acres, a couple hundred acres of timber industry out there, and it's not financially feasible to pave that much. Particularly for the size machines they would have running on top of it, you need at least 6 inches of asphalt to even begin to hold up to that kind of piece. There's another image of the same pile. You can kind of see trees next to it. This is about 30 feet high. You can see that next to you as well. We estimated this pile alone was around 50,000 cubic yards. It's also difficult, and this has been going on for many years, to know with certainty who created what. There's been multiple tenants in each of these sites, and so it's really tough to get your arms around who's responsible to get rid of it. And other things accumulate as well, like concrete and different, lots of iron and steel and tires and railroad ties and you name it. So the port's been struggling with how to deal with this problem for a long time. Recently, we decided to clean up the property by allowing tenants to move all of their wood waste gravel material to one designated location at 500 East Export Road. And that was kind of a one-time deal. That way, everyone's site would be cleaned, and there would be no more claiming that it was left from the previous tenant. So from that point on, they would be responsible for anything they generated. And we would, of course, document the conditions at that time. So Mason County Forest Products was the first company to kind of take advantage of that. And that was part of their lease termination with the port. And that was also necessary to basically prepare the site for Simpson to come in. So Mason County Forest Products hired Prairie Trucking, which is a local company, to relocate all of the clean material to the designated site, and that was in 2010. It was quite a project. It took many, many loads. I don't remember the number now, but they probably moved over 70,000 cubic yards from their lease site. So basically what we would do is, I've been trained by the Department of Ecology to do sampling, looking for contaminated materials. And so I would go out to each tenant's property and basically, based on the port's knowledge of where, what happens when it rains and where does the water go and where are they doing what type of activity, we could pinpoint the most likely areas for contamination. And of course, we would also know what to be looking for based on what it is that industry was doing. And so the first several sets of testing, you would be looking for a very large suite of different chemicals and heavy metals and petroleum products and lots of other things. And then once you've sampled the absolute worst you can find out there, that kind of creates the worst case scenario, and from then on, you can kind of hone in your sampling to the chemicals that you found previously and that you're likely to find again. You can spend a whole lot of money and time sampling yourself silly, and you can go broke doing it, and it makes a lot more sense to use a more methodical scientific approach. So I performed a lot of the sampling early on. Partway through, Mason County Forest Products elected to hire an independent company, an environmental testing company, to continue that sampling. And so they did that, and they collected many hundreds of samples above and beyond what I had collected. And so anytime we found any kind of contamination, of course, that material would be set aside, stockpiled, and then had to be legally disposed of in a landfill, accredited for taking that type of material. In 2011, Shear Brothers Chipping participated in the same one-time movement of material, and they also moved tens of thousands of cubic yards. I could only find one location on their entire property that had any contamination at all, and it was really low levels of petroleum, hydrocarbons, from a machine maybe that leaked or something like that. So that was, we actually remediated that material. So if you aerate it and then provide fertilizer, microbes will naturally break down that material, and then over time you mix it around several times, and then after several months you can test it again, and sure enough the levels were way below cleanup. So now, in 2012, McFarland Cascade was purchased by Stella Jones. And then just recently, in 2013, they started a whole lot of cleanup and stormwater improvements on their property. And they hired Bessie and Sons of Montesano. So they were on site with all their equipment. Now, the port for 2013 had budgeted $200,000 to start doing some major cleanup of Johns Prairie, including building demolition and more stormwater improvements and things like that. And so we went out to bid, and because Bessie and Sons was already fully mobilized, the port actually saw a large savings, and they were of course the low bidder since they were already there. But anyway, this is a stormwater treatment pond that Bessie and Sons created on McFarland Cascades property, and basically port tenants out there are required to do all of the stormwater treatment on their lease premise. And they do that with large ponds, basically, that are lined. They either are lined with a bentonite material, or they could use like a plastic welded membrane, but for the size of a lot of these, that's also pretty cost prohibitive. So typically, the county allows us to just do a naturally lined or bentonite lined pond. And so once that material is treated, then it would be conveyed into a port-provided stormwater infiltration basin, which would be off of the tenant's lease premise. So as I mentioned, the port budgeted $200,000 this year to clean up Johns Prairie. It was funded by the 2012 Johns Prairie timber sale. We awarded to Bessie and Sons. This project involved removal of derelict buildings and large quantities of debris, including thousands of tons of concrete, asphalt, and miscellaneous trash and debris. All remaining piles of wood waste and gravel located on vacant property are hauled to the designated site, and the resulting pile is sculpted for visual appeal and ease of maintenance. The pile will be seeded with grass and planted with trees and could be screened and separated in the future if it becomes cost effective to do so. So these are typical site conditions at 500 East Export Road before the project was initiated. You can see there's all kinds of rubber and railroad ties and concrete and metal, just junk in general. Not an attractive site. So these next few photos are during material hauling. Basically, they demolished that building so fast I didn't even get any pictures of the actual demolition on that one, but you'll see some after shots here shortly. Now, this is after the building came down. You can see in the background the large hill, which is not near as tall as it used to be due to the sculpting of it and the large machines kind of packing it down, which will also make it better for growing trees on. One concern I had before, if you plant it and there's too much voids in the material, then it won't retain water well enough, and the trees will likely die from lack of water. There's another view. I believe we're looking to the north now towards Simpson. South towards Shear Brothers Chicken. And this is the view of the pile from Capitol Hill Road, which is just west of the large pile. So I think, once we've seeded this and planted trees on it, it's gonna look completely natural and just blend in with the rest of the scenery out there. And hopefully someday there will be a more cost-effective way to screen and separate and utilize the material, and maybe we could even find a tenant that would be interested in locating there for that purpose. These are typical site conditions at 340 Millwright Road, which was recently leased by Willpaw Bay Hardwoods. Multiple timber frame structures that were just falling down. A real liability to the port in terms of someone getting hurt, and obviously aesthetically unappealing. Both of these structures were removed. It's kind of hard to show all the concrete and asphalt, but just this piece alone, there's well over 1,000 tons of concrete and asphalt removed. I did get a few shots of these buildings right after they knocked them. They move pretty quick with these big machines. Here they are loading up a lot of the tin and aluminum for recycling. This is when they were almost done removing asphalt and concrete. You can see there's a pile of asphalt back there in the distance. And this is what it looks like afterwards. So basically this has been a partnership, benefits everyone. Johns Prairie Industrial Park probably hasn't looked this good in over 15 years, and numerous employees that have worked out on that property for that duration have come up to me and thanked me and the port for making this happen. It's just kind of generating an overall positive feeling amongst everyone. And not only that, but it's making their property a lot more efficient and useful, and you won't be floundering in the mud near as much in the wintertime, assuming all the stormwater works as planned. Much of the cleanup was performed by port tenants at their cost and by their contractors. We want to thank them for that. And the port was able to spearhead this by providing a location for the wood waste material off each tenant's lease premise. a lot of the material that was generated by companies that later went bankrupt and left the property, and the board was essentially stuck with it. So we'd rather be stuck with it in one central location where it can be dealt with later rather than everywhere. And stormwater management is an ongoing effort that has real benefits, including enhancement of the places we live and work and protection of the environment. So I think this has been a pretty cool project, and I was happy to be a part of it.